page 1, and then in Parshas Kisavoy, towards the end of Chumash Dvorim, that is Sheni. Kapitel Chavav, Pasuk Yud Beis. Okay. A good Moed. Now today's shir is dedicated to the memory of Rabbi Yankiv, Rabbi Yehoshua Tzvi, and Moras Esther Bas Rabbi Yankiv. Rabbi Yankiv, Rabbi Yehoshua Tzvi's Yortzeit is Chav Daled Nissen, 24th of Nissen, and the Yortzeit of Moras Esther Bas Rabbi Yankiv, her Yortzeit is Yud Aleph Nissen. These are the parents of Rav Moshe Trebish, Sheyichya. And tonight, Rav Moshe Trebish is sponsoring L'schus. The Ilu Nishmas, his parents, is sponsoring tonight's shir, and it should be for his schus, for Rav Moshe Trebish and his family, that his parents should be Melitza Yosher, they should have Aliyas Anashoma, and they should be gute better for him and his family, L'tova v'levracha. Yashakoyach. To continue, before we start, I would just like to share with you what I have shared with you in the past, and that is one of the requests and guidance and directives of the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, in a time of plague, and he gives a directive to give tzedakah every hour on the hour, and also before every tefillah, before every prayer. And he says at the end of the day, one should have 18. He says it can be the smallest coin. It can be a penny, wherever in the United States, or the smallest in the circulation, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, it should be 18 high coins. You should set it aside for tzedakah, and that should be tzedakah tatzal mimavetz. That's one of the things that Tzemach Tzedek says, and that's one of the easy things to introduce and to follow. So therefore, just to start the shir with giving tzedakah, I'm giving the first. So everybody, if you want, can join me and just do it in order that Hashem should bring a refuah shlema for all of those who need a refuah shlema. You should protect those who need protection. Yes. In addition, just another reminder, and that is, being that it's Chol Hamoed, and the Alter Rebbe Paskins and Shulchan Aruch, the Rebbe always mentioned to drink wine every day of Chol Hamoed because of the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov. And as the Alter Rebbe says, it's a chiyuv. It's a mandate to drink wine. And the Alter Rebbe says in Torah in Purim that one is obliged to drink a reviyas yain. So therefore, just as a reminder, every day of Chol Hamoed, one should drink a reviyas yain. I had my reviyas yain today, but in the meantime, I can say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, very priya gofen. And I'm saying l'chaim to all the Yidden participating in the shir. May Hashem give that in the schus of the Limud HaTorah, which we're all sharing together, and especially in the schus of the Rogatchover Gaon. So Hashem should be megin umatzil upon us, b'serch Klal Yisrael, and on all of Klal Yisrael, l'chaim v'lebracha. Now going to the topic we're going to discuss, and that is in Parshas Ra'eh. Those who remember, we have discussed this share in the past. Many of you may remember. If you remember, that's wonderful. So it'll bring back, hopefully, good memories. And it's definitely a healthy and a good review. And for me, it was, too, a good review. It wasn't. Anyway, it wasn't so simple to review it. If it's something new, it's different. It's easier sometimes. When you're doing over the old stuff, you're reviewing the old stuff, it's tougher. But whatever the case is, it's all good, Baruch Hashem. And thanks for enabling. Oh, also one more thing. Thank you very much, Menshi Schneier, for serving as a technician tonight. He's a fine Yid, and he's, in addition to all the fine things he does, he's also looking after Yid and should learn Torah, so the schus soll ihm beistehen. We're moving. Okay, so this shir, even though you would seem at some stage, through the shir, I believe you'll come to the realization why we're discussing this topic. Now, this is a Torah of the Rogatchover Gaon found in two places. The Rogatchover Gaon initially has it in his notes, in his glosses on the Moreh Nevuchim. Now, it's known that the Rogatchover Gaon wrote a kuntras on Moreh Nevuchim and wrote glosses and references and analysis on the Moreh Nevuchim. etc. The question is what the bit of commentary of the Rogatchover Gaon we have today published in back of the 5th volume at the end of Chumash Dvorim on the Moreh Nevuchim, is that the Kuntras Moreh Nevuchim which he was referring to? Possibly not. If I recall correctly, someone says it may not be. So therefore, whatever it is, so there in Chelik Gimel on the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rogatchover Gaon discusses the issue we will discuss Be'ezras Hashem tonight, and it's thereafter also repeated in other words and also in a more clear way, even though the words of the Rogatchover on the Moreh Nevuchim are not cryptic, as quite often his words are cryptic and it's hard to work out, but it's quite clear there for those who have a Rogatchover Tzofros Panech on Chumash Dvorim at the end on the Moreh Nevuchim. But it was also penned, the Rogatchover Gaon, when he wrote he wrote a correspondence to the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. So that was in the year, whatever year it was, let me see, I can tell you in a minute what year it was. It was in Tov Reish Pei Tes, that's 1929. There was correspondence with, that's after the previous Rebbe sent him some monetary support, so he sends it back a whole lengthy letter about the mispar of Chamishim, it must have been $50 and the like or something. And then he goes on to speak about the Shara Chamishim, he speaks about Kriyas Yamsuf, and he speaks about this Rambam, etc., etc. How do we have this letter? This correspondence was recorded, penned and recorded by the Lubavitcher Rebbe Zchus Yogan Aleinu in his Rishimis, and from there it was reprinted in the Shaidas Tshuvas Tzofros Panech HaChadosh's Volume 1. So it's all there, and please God, time will allow, it's half of the time passed already. We're moving. So just realize a fair amount of the information we're going to discuss tonight is not found in the text of the Rogatchover Gaon. It's merely an introduction and to give us an overview of what the issues are, and then possibly we'll appreciate to a greater degree the Torah or the Rogatchover. And this is as follows. If you have your Chumash open in Parshas Re'eh, you read in Shishi. Sorry, I say that? I said right, I said Shishi all along. But it happens to be right before Shishi, Posuk, Kapitel, Perik Yudala, chapter 14. In Parshas Re'eh, Posuk Chof Ches. It says, Miktsei Sholosh Shonim Toitzi es kol Maaser Tvuoscha Bashona Ahi v'hinachta b'sharecha, etc. So basically that posuk is telling us as follows. I'll read it to you in the English and the Stone edition. It reads as follows. Chof Ches, at the end of 3 years, you shall take out every tithe of your crop in that year and set it down within your cities. Basically, in other words, this mitzvah, which is being, this mandate, this commandment, which is being conveyed in this parsha is called Biur Maaser, to dispose of Maaser of tithes. Now, even though, what does that mean? And the Torah says it has to be Miktsei Sholosh Shonim, at the end of the 3 years. And Rashi explains in short, Rashi does not elaborate. Rashi says it in short and concise wording that, which Lemaisa B'Poel, there's the lengthy discussion on this mitzvah. And the mitzvahs Biur Maaser in the Talmud Yerushalmi and in the Mishnayos Maaser Sheni, and in the Talmud Yerushalmi and Maaser Sheni, and in the Rambam Hilchos Maaser Sheni, etc., etc. So without going, let's move on. So the Torah says at the end of 3 years, what's happening? So the Torah says you should dispose of and remove all the Maaser of your grain, the tithes of your grain. What are we talking about? So the halachas are, we know that the first 3 years, the Shemitah cycle, the 7-year cycle. So it goes as follows. The first, there are 2 categories. The breakup or the breakdown is in 2 separate stages. There's a stage of the first 3 years and the stage of the last 3 years. And that is as follows. The first year, it's incumbent upon one who has the harvest. So he has to give Maaser Rishon to the Levi, right? And he also gives that tithe to the Levi, the 10th to the Levi of his harvest. The same, the Truma, he has to give also an amount to the Kohen of his harvest. That's the first year. The second year, he gives again the Truma, it's Trumas Maaser, etc. There are a lot of details within that. In general, there's Truma and Maaser, right? Without going into the details. Then there's Trumas Maaser, etc. We're moving. The second year, the same applies. And he gives also Truma and then also Maaser. Now, the Maaser, the tithes he gives to the Levi, to the Levite, in the first 2 years, that's described as Maaser Maaser Rishon. That's Maaser Rishon. The first 2 years he also has Maaser Sheni. So the first 2 years of the Shemitah, of the 7-year cycle, of the Shemitah years, so the first 2 years, the first year is Truma, Maaser Rishon, and Maaser Sheni. Sheni means the second Maaser, the second tithe. The second Maaser is not given to the Levi. The second tenth of his harvest, he has to take up with him to Yerushalayim, and he eats it with purity and holiness in the city of Yerushalayim, in Yerushalayim, or he can redeem it if he doesn't want to schlep. He has too much to schlep. The harvest is too much to take along, so he can redeem it, exchange it, and take the money with him, and that value, and the value he spends on items as detailed in the halacha, what he's meant to spend the monies on in Yerushalayim. So there's Maaser. So again, the first 2 years is Truma, and then Maaser Rishon and Maaser Sheni. And again, the second year is Maaser Rishon and Maaser Sheni. The third year, it's Maaser Rishon and Maaser Oni. Maaser Oni. In other words, the second tithe is undone, and what is done, what takes over, what's in its place. So it's Maaser Oni. That's the 10th of his harvest for the poor man, for those who are poverty-stricken, etc., and details in that too. So again, clear. So we have the first 2 years Maaser Rishon, Maaser Sheni. The second year Maaser Rishon, Maaser Sheni. The third year is Maaser Rishon, Maaser Oni. The fourth year, the fourth cycle, the fourth year of the 7-year cycle, right? The din is as follows: when it comes Pesach of the fourth year after the 3 years, one has to be sure to remove. That's what this parasha is telling us. Biur Maaser. Normally, generally, when he has the truma, he gives to the kohen. When he is able to give it to the kohen, he gives it to him immediately. Maaser Rishon he'll give to the Levi. When he gives it to the Levi, and you generally would give it immediately. The same goes for Maaser Sheni. He'll travel to Jerusalem. He's in Eretz Yisrael. He'll travel to Yerushalayim. I don't know if he'll travel with an Egged bus or without an Egged bus. And if he's confined, then he's locked in, so he can't do it. So he'll have to what? So he has to wait till the restrictions are removed. But you have to follow the law, and therefore don't get out of the house if you're told not to get out of the house. So he can't travel with his Maaser Sheni to Yerushalayim. So he waits till his restrictions are removed. I'm just talking based on what's going on today. Don't worry about it. Anyway, the outcome. So the din is, if he hasn't removed all the truma and all the Maaser Rishon and all the Maaser Sheni, he hasn't given it away to the kohen and the Levi, and he hasn't brought the Maaser Sheni to Yerushalayim, so the Torah says in the fourth year, Pesach time, during the Pesach season, he has to remove this Biur Maaser. He has to dispose of all the truma, all the Maaser, and all the Maaser Sheni. He has to give the truma to the kohen, get it out of your house, get it out of your possession. It's not beer like beer chumetz, but you have to give it to whoever it belongs to. You give your truma to the kohen, you give your Maaser Rishon to the Levi, you take your Maaser Sheni, and there the Torah says Biur Maaser. There you're meant to actually burn it and remove it and get rid of it. Okay, that's the fourth year. The Torah says the same applies. Now then we're going again to the fourth year, fifth year, and the sixth year. So the fourth year again, the cycle starts again in the 7-year cycle, and that is the fourth year. We're again giving the truma and the Maaser Rishon and the Maaser Sheni, the 5th year of the 7-year cycle, of the Shemitah cycle. So it's again the Maaser Rishon and the Maaser Sheni. Again, the 6th year is again Maaser Rishon and Maaser Oni. Again, so the Pesach of the 7th year, there you go. So just as there's a din of Biur Maaser, you have to remove and dispose of whatever you have collected and haven't given away, or you haven't taken to Yerushalayim, you haven't given it to who's meant to receive it in its correct time. So therefore you're meant to remove and dispose of it. In the Pesach of the 4th year, the same applies. After the 4th, 5th, and the 6th year, you're meant to dispose of it in the Pesach season of the 7th year. That's called Biur Maaser. Clear. Finished. Now that's the Parashas Re'eh. Now just by the way, if you'll take a look at Rashi, Rashi seems to be a bit unclear in the Rashi in the Chumash. Rashi seems to say, it's fine. Yeah, what does Rashi say? Rashi says, Shi'avarim in Abai is Bishlishis, the Rashi in the Chumash on the spot. It's Bishlishis, Rashi says, you remove it. It's meant to be on the 3rd year. Well, Mefarshim already take issue with this Rashi. It's already mentioned. Actually, Rashi in Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Aleph, seems to say the same thing. And the Yad Rameh, Rab Meir Abulafia, in his Yad Rameh, Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Aleph, says, yes, there's something with this Rashi. It's not the third year. Rashi says there the third year and the sixth year. It's actually the fourth year and the seventh year. Okay, so that's already dealt with and addressed. We're moving on to Parshas Kisavai. Parshas Kisavai is a sequence to this mitzvah, and that is, the Torah says, Parshas Kisavai, that's Perik. It's late. Perik Chavav. Pasuk Yud Beis. There the Torah says, Kisachala la'aser is kol Maaser tevoscha b'shana hashlishi shnasa Maaser. So there the Torah says, when you finish, right, giving all the tithes from the third year, right, and then you give it away to the Levi, to the Ger, to the convert, to the Yosem, to the orphan, to the almana, to the widow. Torah says when you remove it, there Torah says when you have finished removing and giving it all away, so then there's a new halacha. That's a new mitzvah, and the mitzvah is called Vidui Maaser. Vidui Maaser. Plainly, Vidui means confession. Well, in this case, some want to say that the wording of Vidui, what kind of confession? Generally, confession is relating to sin. So Mefarshim want to bring to our attention what the Sforno says, and this is brought to our attention by the Tosfos Yom Tov. He records the Sforno in Mishnayos and Perikei and in Masechta Maaser Sheni. He's very excited about the Sforno and the Aderes. The Aderes. We mentioned the Aderes many times. Rabbi Eliyahu David Rabinovich Tuumim, who was a Rav in Ponevezh, and thereafter he was a Rav in Mir. And then after he was a Rav in Yerushalayim, a big Gaon, there were about 100 Svarim which he penned. And as I mentioned frequently, that in Mochon Ahavat Shalom and Rehov Badichev off Meir Sha'orim. Well, I think Meir Sha'orim is in lockdown now, so don't go there, especially if you're restricted to be indoors. So there is a Mochon Ahavat Shalom, Rehov Badichev there, and there they've published, they have his manuscripts. Don't ask me why, but the Iker, they've published 10 Svarim already from his. He wrote close to 100 Svarim. He's known with his different Chidush Torah on the Rambam and on different areas, etc. He wrote a special sefer called Achris Shonim. That's referring to the mitzvah of Vidui Maaser. I'll call upon him. So there, one of the things he mentions, he says, I don't understand why the Tosfos Yom Tov is all excited about the Sforno. He doesn't really appreciate it. But the Sforno, let me just say, the Sforno says that it relates to sin, because what is the sin? The reason we're giving our truma to the kohen and we're giving the Maaser to the Levi is because there was a sin. And Hashem, originally before the sin of the Egel, of the golden calf, so then all the avodah, all of the service in the Beis Hamikdash and all the tithes and all the truma were given to the firstborn. And then Hashem removed it from the firstborn, and then advised, right, mandated that we give the truma to the kohen and the Maaser to the Levi. The Mela, therefore, says the Sforno, when we're talking about giving away the back, giving the truma to the kohen and the Maaser, the tithes to the Levi, it rings a bell, so to speak, about why we're giving it to them. So that brings about to our attention the inyan of the sin, which we once sinned, and therefore it's called confession. Others want to say it's not a confession, it's merely a declaration, and that's why we can use. And actually, the Adara says that even when it's in a mode of declaration. Pardon? Who is that? So even when it's a declaration, we can use the term vidui. All good, we're moving. So we're going to use the term declaration. So there's a declaration made. He's meant to declare that. And the Torah goes on to say, what is comprised in his declaration? What is he meant to say? What is the warning? The Torah goes on to say in the Chumash, you say before Hashem, I've removed all what I've meant to remove, what I was meant to remove. And Rashi explains all the details. The Kodesh is referring to the Maaser Sheni, etc. The Levi is the tithes, the Gela Yosmul Almona is the orphan or the widow, that is the Maaser Oni, those who were poverty stricken and the like. And that's it. And he did it and followed all the rules and regulations, as Rashi explains all the details of the Pasuk. And then he requests and is mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless the harvest, etc., etc. So this mitzvah is called Vidui Maaser, right? The declaration of the Maaser. So this is a mitzvah No, actually, the two separate mitzvahs, nevertheless, in the number of mitzvahs, in the Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvahs, where the Rambam enumerates all the Teriyag mitzvahs, he only counts it as one mitzvah, and that mitzvah is Vidui Maaser, the declaration. And the same goes for the Sefer HaChinuch, or mitzvah Tov Reish Zayin, and the mitzvah 607. He also counts it as one mitzvah, and it's seemingly none of the ones who have the countdown of the mitzvahs and number and enumerate and number the mitzvahs mention the mitzvah of Biur Maasers, of removal of the Maasers as a separate mitzvah. It seems to be part and parcel of this mitzvah of Vidui Maaser, and this is explained in the. I'm not going there now because it's too late. But it's actually raised. The question is raised by the Minchas Chinuch and Mitzvah Tov Reish Zayin, and he wonders and he queries. We see that one is not especially dependent on the other, and we find in history at times that we fulfilled the mitzvah of the removal of the Maasers, even though the declaration we weren't able to say the declaration, even though the halacha is that in order to say the declaration, we have to remove all the tithes and all the truma and all the Maaser Sheni, and everything has to be removed. But nevertheless, the other way, we can do the mitzvah of removal without saying the declaration, as we find in the Mishnah that Rabbi Gamliel was after the Churban Abayis, and he says removes the tithes according to the Rishonim, etc., found in the Mishnayos. So the Minchas Chinuch says if that's segregated segregated issues, one is not linked up with the other, and because mitzvah's Biur is a separate mitzvah, it should be counted as a separate mitzvah, and he doesn't know why the ones who enumerate and count out the mitzvahs don't count it and just count it as part and parcel of this mitzvah of the one mitzvah as the mitzvah of declaring the removal of the Maasers. And like I said, the Sefer Mishnah Rishona explains it in the Sechta Maaser Sheni. For those who are interested, can see it there, and also in the Sefer Merkevas HaMishnah in Hilchas Maaser Sheni, it's mentioned there. And basically, they explain that the whole mitzvah of Biur Maasers, of removal of the Maasers, is to enable you to say the declaration. It's getting late; we got to move. Okay, now let me just. Now here we go. Now the Mishnah says that we learn out, and the Sifri teaches us that we equate. Being that it says in the Torah, Mikates, that when should the Biur Maasers be? It says Mikates Shalosh Shonim. If you see in Chumash Parshas Rei, it says Mikates Shalosh Shonim, right, at the end of the 3 years. And then it says in the next chapter in Shishi, it says Mikates Sheva Shonim, right? Tasa Shemitah, it says Mikates Sheva Shonim, and there it talks about the end. And because the mitzvah of Hakel so we find the mitzvah of Hakel is in the Sukkos, so therefore it's in the Yom Tov. So the mitzvah of the Sifri teaches us, and also, etc. The mitzvah of Biur Maasers has to be in the Yom Tov, and that is the Yom Tov Pesach. And the Talmud Yerushalmi explains the technicalities why Dafka has to be in Pesach. So it remains that way, and that's a given, and that's the halacha in the Rambam in Hilchas Maaser Sheni Perik Yud Aleph, that the Biur Maasers is in the Chag HaPesach. Let me just bring to your attention, and also the declaration is also in the season of Pesach, during Pesach. It's just that the Minchas Chinuch, Mitzvah Tov Reish Zayin, tells us that biblically, Mida Oraisa, it's good, it could be done anytime throughout the Chag HaPesach, from the first day of Pesach until the end of Pesach. But the Chachamim came and actually limited it to a specific day of Pesach. And now we're going to go to the specific day. And according to the Minchas Chinuch, it's Midrabanan. What is this specific day? So the Mishnah says as follows. Let me read to you a Mishnah in Masechta Maaser Sheni. For those who have a Mishnayos and can quickly turn the pages, they can see it. It's very obvious. It's obvious in the Mishnah in Maaser Sheni. It says, Masechta Maaser Sheni Perik Hey. The Mishnah says, Erev Yom Tov Horishon Shel Pesach Shel Revi'is V'Shel Shvi'is HaYabil. Erev, the day preceding, before the first day of Pesach of the 4th year, and the first day, the day before the first day of Pesach, meaning on Erev Pesach of the first days of Pesach of the 4th year, and the 7th year, Biur was this. You're meant to dispose of your tithes, of your truma, of your Maaser Sheni. All righty. Then there's another Mishnah, and the Mishnah goes on in Mishnah Yud. It says, B'mincha, that's when you do the removal. The removal is Erev Yom Tov Horishon. Okay, that's past. The Yud. In Mishnah Yud it says, B'mincha b'Yom Tov ha'achroin ha'yu misvadim. in Mincha in the late afternoon of the last day of Pesach, that's when they made the declaration. So you hear what's going on? So they had all, in other words, that's what the Chachamim set out, that it should be the day before Pesach, there's the removal. Removal would mean he has to make sure the Kohen gets his Truma, he has to make sure the Levi gets his Maaser, he has to make sure the poor man has his Maaser and the tithes, and then the Maaser Sheni, if he can't travel to Jerusalem, he has to burn it. Like Biur Chametz, like, it's not Biur Chametz, it's Biur Maaser. Okay. But when is the declaration? The declaration is on the late afternoon of the last day of Pesach, which in the context of the Mishnah, the last day of Pesach is Shvi Shel Pesach. Shvi Shel Pesach. That's right. Okay, all good. Actually, the Aderes queries an interesting thing. He says, what happens if someone is in Yerushalayim, right? He had the harvest in Eretz Yisrael, so therefore he had Truma and Maaser, etc., and Maaser Sheni, and he made all the Biur Maaseris on Erev Pesach, and then he travels to Chutz La'aretz, and now he's in the diaspora, and he has a second day Yom Tov. So when does he make his declaration? Does he make his declaration on Achron Shel Pesach, or does he make his declaration on Shvi Shel Pesach? Well, he definitely concludes, if I recall correctly, in the Sefer Achros Hashonim, he definitely makes it on Shvi Shel Pesach, being that we know that the Pesach, the Oraisa ends after Shvi Shel Pesach, so therefore, being that the Torah says it has to be, we derive it from a Gzera Shova, etc., that has to be on the Chag Pesach, so therefore, definitely his declaration will be on Shvi Shel Pesach. Ended. Okay, so it says in our text. Now let me bring to your attention another interesting thing. Guess what? Nevertheless, if you take out a Rambam, here we're coming closer to our shir, it's very, very late. The Rambam says as follows, the Rambam in Hilchas Maaser Sheni, Perik Yud Aleph, says the Rambam as follows. He paskins like the Mishnayos, right? There we go. So first, he in the Halacha Gimel, he says, when do we say the Vidui, the declaration? The Mincha. On Mincha, b'yom tov ha'achron shel Pesach, shel Revi'is v'shel Shvi'is. That's very clear, and he brings the pasuk for that, etc., etc. Basically, cut and paste verbatim from the Mishnah. Wonderful. Then he goes on to say, then it says as follows, listen carefully. Then the Rambam says, in Halacha Zayin, in Halacha Zayin, in Hilchas Maaser Sheni, Perik Yud Aleph, Halacha Zayin, says the Rambam, Vidui, the declaration can be made only when you're rid of all the Maaseris. There's nothing left in your possession. Everything was given away. Everything was taken care of. Removed it all. So then we say the declaration. It says by the Vidui, everything is removed. The Rambam says as follows. Listen to what the Rambam says. Hecht und steunt. The Erev Yom Tov ha'achroin Hoya ha-biur ulamachar misvadi. Says the Rambam, when was the biur? Erev Yom Tov ha'achron, the day before Shvi Shel Pesach, was the biur, was the removal, and ulamachar, and the next day, the day of Shvi Shel Pesach, misvadin is the declaration. And here all the Meforshim come and ask, what is going on here? The Mishnah states clearly it's Erev Yom Tov harishon. That means Erev Pesach, the way we know Erev Pesach. The Rambam in Halacha Zayin says it makes it very clear that the Erev Yom Tov ha'achron, the day before Shvi Shel Pesach, that's when the removal of the Chametz is meant to be. And not the Erev Pesach, the way it seems to be in the Mishnah. Well, thank God. The Kesef Mishnah on the spot says it seems that the Rambam had the text of the Mishnayos where it read Erev Yom Tov ha'achron. All right, it didn't say Erev Yom Tov Rishon. So according to that, there are variations in the text of the Mishnayos, which is not very usual. But I'll call upon him. Here we have a nafka mina la'alacha. When do we have to remove it biblically, in midrabanon, whatever? Is it Erev Yom Tov Rishon, Erev Yom Tov Rachon, Erev Pesach, or Erev Shvi Shel Pesach? The Rambam says the removal is Erev Shvi Shel Pesach. Says the Kesef Mishnah. The Rambam's text in the Mishnah must have been that way. Well, the fact is nowadays we have, thank God, from the manuscripts of the Rambam's text in the edition, the Kapach edition, of the Mishnah. So there he had the manuscripts of the Rambam. The Rambam also didn't just write his commentary. We have the manuscripts of the Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah. We also have the manuscripts of the Rambam's text of the Mishnah, because the Rambam, before he wrote his commentary, his handwritten commentary, which we have, they had at least, and I believe it's in the universities today, but he also rewrote the text of the Mishnah. In other words, the Rambam had the text, wrote the text of the Mishnah, and so it is in the Kapach's edition, and not just the Kapach's edition, but also in the edition for those who don't see eye to eye with Kapach for whatever reason, and that is, it's called the Korach edition, and it's from Bnei Brak. Would you believe it? It's a Korach edition for Bnei Brak. Does that sound right? Maybe it does. Think about it. So it's in a Korach edition from Bnei Brak. His name was Harav Korach, and it was published. He lived in Bnei Brak, and the Machon HaMaor from Har Nof Yerushalayim, Harav Biton employed him because he knew Arabic. He knows Arabic very well. I think it's new, or he knows, whatever. So he translated it, and he also has the manuscripts of the Mishnah. So there too in that text, which is a wonderful edition actually, with wonderful commentary, that edition. So there, to the text of the Rambam is Erev Yom Tov Ha'achron. Okay. Now, so we have now two opinions when we have to have the removal of the chametz. Everybody seems to agree, according to the Mishnah, that when is the declaration that surely on the last day, that means on Shvi Shal Pesach in the afternoon, mincha time. The question is only about the removal. Is it Erev Pesach or Erev Shvi Shal Pesach? Let me just bring to your attention something novel of the Aderes in his Sefer Achrishonim, when he takes issue with the commentary of the Vilna Gaon, and he says, I don't see any problem. One has an option to also say the Vidui, the declaration, even in the afternoon of the first day of Pesach. He doesn't dafka have to say it in the afternoon of Shvi Shal Pesach, as we'll continue on discussing, that it was only for his benefit that it was pushed off for the last day of Pesach and not for the first day of Pesach. It's getting very late, we're moving. I'll call upon him. The facts are the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch we have in Shulchan Aruch Yeridei Simin Shin Lamed Aleph. We have a Hilchos Matnas Aniyim, etc., etc. And there you'll find that the halachis of you'll find there, as the Biur HaGoyla points out, or Moshe Rafkash, the grandfather of the Vilna Gaon, in his glosses, in Biur HaGoyla he points out that from Sif Mem or Mem Aleph or whatever, Sif Kuf Mem Aleph, all the way till the end, or Kuf Mem, in other words, from the last section of Simin Shin Lamed Aleph in Yeridea, that's where basically the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Mechaber, records just about verbatim of what the Rambam says. So therefore, there too, the halacha is, he records that the Biur, Maaser, not just the declaration, is meant to be on Shvi Shal Pesach, but also the Biur, the removal of the Maasers, is also meant to be on the day before Shvi Shal Pesach, like the Rambam. The Vilna Gaon and the Biur HaGro already brings to our attention that the Rivit argues, if I recall correctly. I think so. I don't have a Shulchan Aruch in front of me. But B'chol Oifim, yeah. No, I'm sorry, he doesn't. No, the Biur HaGro brings a Rivit for some other issue, which we'll discuss later. But let's go on in the meantime. I'll call upon him. So it's very clear from the Shulchan Aruch, and that's the Psak Halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, and the Levush HaOire, right? The Talmud of the Ramah also records this halacha, this shita of the Rambam, and he explains the shita of Rambam in Yeridei Simin Shin Lamed Aleph. Let me bring to your attention that this has also influence on the Haftorah. It's very late. I'm sorry. Oh boy. I would love to share with you as much as I can, and it looks like I'm going to have to cut out 3/4 of the stuff in the Haftorah of Shabbos HaGadol. So if many of you had a schus to hear a Haftorah this Shabbos HaGadol, or if you remember years ago the Shabbos HaGadol, the fact is that there's 3 minhagim on what is the Haftorah of Shabbos HaGadol. We know, it's known, it's universally accepted that what is the Haftorah of Shabbos HaGadol? Va'orva. Va'orva means it should be sweet, etc. Okay, so that is found in Malachi, and it's this. And the Levush brings 2 minhagim in Ashkenaz, in Poland. 2 minhagim. There's a minig he brings. There was 1 minig. There's actually 3 minhagim brought in Klal Yisrael. There's a minig of, I believe, universally accepted, and that is followed, and that is that Va'orva, that special Haftorah, is said on every Shabbos HaGadol, which is on every Shabbos HaGadol, every Shabbos preceding Pesach, irrelevant. when Pesach is, if Shabbos HaGadol is Erev Pesach, or Shabbos HaGadol is the middle of Pesach is the middle of the week, every Shabbos preceding, every year, the Shabbos preceding Pesach, irrelevant when Pesach is, we will always say the Haftarah V'orva. And the reason is, the Levush brings in Siman Tov Lamed, the Levush says the reason is because being that in the Haftarah we mentioned, the coming of Eliyahu Hanavi, that's what it says. So therefore, the minig was to read that Haftarah on Shabbos before Pesach, because Pesach too, it was Hashem delivered the Jewish people from exile through Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the emissary, was the Shliach Hashem to redeem the Yidden. The same so that is the Me'ein HaMa'ura. So the Haftarah has also the same message, so to speak. Is alluded. The message is also about the redemption of exile. So that's that's the reason we always say it the Shabbos before, irrespective of when Pesach is. Then there's another minig quoted in the Levush that they only say Shabbos. They only say the Haftarah V'orva only when Shabbos is Erev Pesach. If Shabbos is Erev Pesach, only then do you say V'orva. But any other Shabbos Shagadol, when it's not Erev Pesach, you do not say V'orva. Why? So the Levush explains why. And the reason is, he says, being that it says in this Haftarah, it says, Haviu es kol ha-Maaser al beis ha'oitzer, bring all the tithes to the granary. Says the Levush, it's me'ein ha-Ma'ura. Me'ein ha-Ma'ura means that it matches with the season, it fits with the season. So listen what the Levush says. Interesting what the Levush says in Siman Tov Lamed, in the beginning of Hilchos Pesach. He says, being that it says in Rashi and Chumash, and that's precisely correct. Rashi and Chumash, take out your Rashi. In Parshas Savoy, Rashi says clearly Erev Pesach. Rashi says that the removal is on Erev Pesach, right? And Rashi says the same thing in Sanhedrin. And Rashi says it many other places in the Shas that it's on Erev Pesach. And the Yad Rameh is not happy with it, because Erev Pesach follows with the text of the Mishnah, but the Yad Rameh says the text of the Mishnah is Erev Yom Tov Ha'achron, it's Erev Shvi Shel Pesach. But Rashi had the text of the Mishnah as we have, and because says the Rashi in the Chumash, says the Levush, that it's an Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, so it's Me'ein HaMa'ura. They used to have to remove the tithes from their property, from their possession, dispose of it on Erev Pesach. So that's why the Shabbos HaGadol, which is Erev Pesach, we say the Haftarah, which speaks about that topic. Haviu es ha-Maaser el beis ha'oitzer, take your tithes to the granary. That's the second minig, and etc. By the way, that minig, the Balatani, the Rav, and the Alter Rebbe, and the Shulchan Aruch, paskins like that minig, and the basis, the source of that minig, why he chooses to follow with that minig, even though it may not be the universal minig, is because that's the way he chose, but it's found. The Maaser B'Poel, the Rebbe references that it's in the Biur Heitev on the spot. The Biur Heitev paskins and says that that's the minig that we follow with this minig only when it's Erev Pesach. And so also the Eliyah Zuta says that in Prague, so was the minig. And also the Meker Chaim, and that is Rabbi Yankiv Lisa, the known Chavaz Das and Yeridea, also says clearly that that's the minig. Upon him, that's the minig Chabad and the like. There's a third minig. And the third minig is the minig Hagra, the Vilna Gaon minig in his Sefer, in his Sefer HaMenhagim, Maaser Rav, Simen, Kuf Ayin Vav, his minig is Moshe Kapoyer. Listen to what he says. He says, when you say the Haftarah of V'orva, only when Shabbos HaGadol is not Erev Pesach. Isn't that good? I like it. So that's wonderful. The Alter Rebbe says you should say Dafka when it's Erev Pesach, and the Vilna Gaon says Dafka when it's not Erev Pesach, or works the opposite. When the Vilna Gaon says it should be Dafka, not Erev Pesach, the Alter Rebbe says Dafka when it is Erev Pesach. It's just wonderful. I love it. And L'maaseh B'Poel, listen to this. Let me, before we go to the Vilna Gaon, because it's very, very late, let me just share with you also Rabbi Yankiv Enden in the Siddur says the reason why we always say the Haftarah, V'orva and Shabbos HaGadol, because this is always relevant to Pesach about the Tfuah, about the Maaser, about the tithes, because the fact is, the Mishnah says in Masechta Be'ah, that Pesach nidoinin al Tfuas ha'aretz. On Pesach Hashem judges us for the grain, for the harvest. The Mela therefore, and we know what the Chazal say, that it will fulfill the mitzvahs of the truma and with the harvest, and the Maaser, the tithes with the harvest, Hashem will give blessing in the harvest. So therefore, he says, every single being that the season of Pesach is judged. The time of Pesach, the Mishnah says, is judged for the grain, right? So therefore, we, on every Shabbos HaGodel, irrespective if it's Erev Pesach or not Erev Pesach, we always say it. In other words, that other minig found by the Levush, but he gives us different reason, not because of Eliyahu Hanavi, but because it's relevant to every Pesach. We're moving on. I just want to say as follows. The Alter Rebbe says, and this is negate our shir, not the indirectly negate. The Alter Rebbe says, even though the halacha is, after the Alter Rebbe explains, the Rav Shulchan Aruch says that we are to say Dafka on the Shabbos of Erev Pesach because it matches up with the time. Because on Erev Pesach we remove. There's the removal of the Maaser, says the Alter Rebbe, even though it's explained that the time of the removal is on Erev Yom Tov Ha'achron Shel Pesach, the day before Shvi Shel Pesach. And the Alter Rebbe says V'chein Iker. The Iker is like that opinion. That is the opinion of the Rambam. Why is V'chein Iker? Because so is written in Yeridei Simishin Lamed Aleph. Says the Alter Rebbe, from this, nevertheless, we say this after on the Shabbos, which is Erev Pesach, which seems to only coincide with the Shita of Rashi, because the minig was accepted that way. Because it was the custom, so therefore so was accepted. And interestingly, I think this also reconciles that there's no contradiction in the Levush. The Levush brings that you remove the Maaser on Erev Pesach. Nevertheless, he paskins in Yeridei that you remove the Maaser on Shvish, on the day before Shvi Shel Pesach, because there he passes like the Rambam. That's the Psak Halacha. But when it comes to the explaining the custom, there he brings the Pirush Rashi ala Torah. Okay, we're moving on. The Iker is interesting. So the Aderes has something to say. He mentions the Gra, that the Gra says just the opposite of all the Minhagim, and he says as follows. He has an interesting take. He says if it's Erev, he says it will depend on the different texts. He says if we have to do the removal of the tithes on Erev Shvi Shel Pesach, so then Shabbos preceding that, even if it's not Erev Pesach, then we should read the Haftarah where it says remove the tithes, because we have to tell the person in advance. But if it's Erev Pesach, so then we should read it, not the Shabbos of Erev Pesach, we should read it 2 Shabbos before, a Shabbos much earlier, because the person will know in advance, etc. Okay, we ended with that. And that's the relevance to our shir about the Shulchan Aruch. We're going on with the Rambam. Now the Kesef Mishnah says that the Rambam's text of the Mishnah was that way, and we've said already that the text of the Rambam in the Mishnah is taka that way, that it's an Erev Shvi Shel Pesach. And like I say, other Rishonim follow with the Shita of the Rambam. The Samag records the Shita of Rambam. Many other Rishonim record the Shita of the Rambam, and many Rishonim record like the Shitas Rashi in Sanhedrin, etc. And if you take out your Mishnayos, you will see that the Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Shaya Pick on the Gilyon, will bring to your attention the different references throughout the Shas, where we find different Rishonim. The Aruch will follow, the Rashi follows with the Aruch, and others differ, etc. So that's in relation to the general Shitas. The Kesef Mishnah brings proof to the Rambam, that we are to remove, the mitzvah of the removal is the day before Shvi Shel Pesach. And he brings proof from the Talmud Yerushalmi. And the proof from the Talmud Yerushalmi is basically as follows. The din is that once you make the declaration that I have removed everything, you cannot partake of anything what is left. In other words, when you give it away, you give it away. So you're going to give the truma to the kohen and the maaser to the Levi. But the maaser sheni, once you say, you make the declaration, I've removed it, meaning I've consumed it, right? There's no way you're allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to eat it, even if you have it left. You can't eat it any longer. There's a prohibition to eat anything once after you make the declaration. Because you said you've removed it, so it had to be removed, and it had to be removed. You can't consume of it. You can't consume it. Therefore, the Talmud Yerushalmi says the reason the Chachamim instituted to make the declaration on the latest point of the Chag of Pesach is just in case a person will need to also eat some of that Maaser Sheni in Yerushalayim, and he'll need that additional grain to prepare his Yom Tov meals. So they said he should have what to eat. Therefore, they said, don't declare it on the first day of Pesach, declare it only in the later days of Pesach. In the last point of Pesach, that's the mincha of Shvi'ei Shel Pesach. And the Vilna Gaon, therefore, based on that, wants to say that's why the Rambam seems to be more correct, that also the removal of from his property and the disposal of it should also be in the later days. He says in his Pirush Shnois Eliyahu, because it doesn't make any sense. What's going on here? He's going to remove everything, and what? But he still needs food to eat, or additional food if he's going to have guests or whatever. So he's going to be saving, he's going to be holding on. He removes everything, and he's going to still hold on to what? To a big amount of the Maaser Sheni until the last day of Yom Tov. Doesn't sound right. If he's removing it, if he removes it in the last day, so he only has a little amount left over. But if he's on Erev Shvi'ei Shel Pesach, but if he's removing it before, so in what way did he remove it? That's not called removing it or disposing of it. If you still have a fair amount left for the rest of the days of Yom Tov, rather if you dispose of it on Erev Shvi'ei Shel Pesach, so then you're only leaving over the amount you need for the last days of Pesach, and that's it. So therefore, the Vilna Gaon in Shnois Eliyahu appreciates the pshita of the Rambam, his text of the Mishnah, that the disposal should of the Maaser of the tithe should be on Erev Shvi'ei Shel Pesach, and the same the Minchas Chinuch and Mitzvah Tafrish Zayin. For his reasoning, he gives other two reasons why it's dafka on the last days. It's very late. Okay, interesting. The expression of the Talmud Yerushalmi is that he should make the declaration in the morning. Why does it say you make the declaration at Mincha? Says the Talmud Yerushalmi, because Ad Kan mitzvah lechel. Up to this point, it's a mitzvah to eat. In other words, it's a mitzvah to eat. It's Yom Tov morning, Shvi'ei Shel Pesach in the morning, you got to eat a meal. So Ad Kan mitzvah lechel, so therefore he can't make the declaration in the morning, because we said once you make the declaration that he has removed the tithes. He can't eat anymore, can't consume any more of that Maaser Sheni. So therefore we pushed it off to Mincha time, because he's still a mitzvah to eat. Now there's an interesting argument between the Tosfos Yom Tov and Rabbi Yankov Emden, in if we can prove from here that we have to eat Shalosh Shudas on Yom Tov. There happens to be, I'm going to go through this quickly, in Hilchas Yom Tov, in Siman Tov Kuf Chav Tes, the Tur in Siman Tov Kuf Chav Tes mentions that it would seem from the Rambam that you have to, from the Rambam, Perik Lamed Milchas Shabbos, it would seem from the Rambam that you have to eat Gimel 3 meals on Shabbos, of course, and the same applies for Yom Tov. You have to eat 3 meals on Yom Tov. Would be a bad idea, right? 3 meals on Yom Tov. It's not enough. You didn't eat enough. You need 3 meals. But anyway, he says, so it seems from the Rambam in Hilchas Shabbos. And then he says, but the Rosh says there's no need for 3 meals on Yom Tov, only on Shabbos. The Beis Yosef says that ain't a mukhrach. We're not forced to say that that's the meaning of that Rambam. We're not going to go into that now. But I'll call upon him. It's clear from the Tur. According to the Tur, there's a machlekes of the Rambam and the Rosh if you have to eat 2-3 meals on Yom Tov or not, or just on Shabbos. The fact is, in the Shulchan Aruch, the halacha is in Siman Tov Kuf Chav Tes in the Yom Tov that we don't have to eat 3 meals on Yom Tov. We only eat the night meal and the morning meal. That's enough. The Tosfos Yom Tov in his Mishnayos and his Maaser Sheni wants to bring proof from this Talmud Yerushalmi, where the Yerushalmi says, let him make the declaration in the morning, and he says, no, you got to eat in the morning. Is proof that there's no mitzvah to eat a 3rd meal on Yom Tov, because he's making the declaration in the morning, and we say we don't want, the reason he doesn't make it in the morning is because he has to eat his morning meal. It would seem that that's all he has to eat is a morning meal, but he doesn't have to eat an afternoon meal. So he says from here a strong proof that we don't need Gimel Sudas on Yom Tov. Actually, the Magen Avram references this Tosfos Yom Tov in Siman Tov Kuf Chav Tes, and the Vilna Gaon also in his Biur Hagara in Hilchas Yom Tov brings this Yerushalmi to prove, and he basically says what the Tosfos Yom Tov says. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yankov Emden, who generally in his Pirush Lechem Shamayim doesn't appreciate the Tosfos Yom Tov for who knows what kind of reason, and therefore he attacks the Tosfos Yom Tov, but he says there's no proof from this Talmud Yerushalmi, and therefore he has his way of learning this Yerushalmi, and also in the Meleches Shloime on the Mishnayos also learns and says there's no proof from this Yerushalmi, and he says possibly we can still learn, says Rabbi Yankov Emden, that even according to this Yerushalmi, we still meant to eat 3 meals on the Yom Tov, and he says, listen to what he concludes, Rabbi Yankov Emden, his sharp tongue, Ochalti va'oichel, ich habe gegessen 3 Sudas Yom Tov und ich will weiter essen 3 Sudas Yom Tov. That's it. He says, because there's no right from the Yerushalmi. I want to just say an interesting thing, and I find it interesting, because as a Lubavitcher, we know we eat Sudas Moshiach. We eat 3 meals on Shvi Shel Pesach. In Eretz Yisrael, we eat at Shvi Shel Pesach, and in the diaspora, we eat at Achron Shel Pesach. But in Eretz Yisrael, where we have one day, we eat 3 meals on Shvi Shel Pesach. So even though on Yom Tov you don't eat 3 meals, right? Nevertheless, but on Shvi Shel Pesach, he eat 3 meals. And it's known, the meaning of the Vilna Gaon also, that even though he didn't eat Tafka 3 meals on Yom Tov, but nevertheless, on Shvi Shel Pesach, right? Ni'ilas Achag, whatever you call it, he ate 3 meals. The Baal Shem Tov called it Mesudas Moshiach. And the Vilna Gaon didn't love Dafka, but Al Talpon, they ate 3 meals on Shvi Shel Pesach. I want to say that this whole discussion of this proof for every Yom Tov to have to eat 3 meals or not, L'chol days, I want to say there's no raya whatsoever from this Talmud Yerushalmi, because they're all discussing Shvi Shel Pesach. And L'chol days, a Shvi Shel Pesach, you have to eat 3 meals. Irrelevant if you follow the Balatanya or if you follow the Vilna Gaon, you're going to be eating 3 meals. So b'meila, lav dafke, it's machriach you to eat 3 meals on a regular Yom Tov. We're moving on. Rambam, oh, it's very late. Menchi, we have an additional 10 minutes. Please say yes.
Yeah, as long as you like.
No, because I don't want to have to continue on a second time, and I don't want there should be too many fallouts. We need another 10 minutes, another 15 minutes, all in all. Thank you very much. The Rambam says as follows. Here comes the Rambam, another psak halach of the Rambam. The Rambam says, Ein misvadin ela, excuse me. The Rambam says, so the din is, there's the Biur Maaser and the Vidui Maaser. Then the Rambam says, Ubein bifnei habayis, bein sheloi bifnei habayis, chayiv levair ol hesvados. A person is obliged, is mandated to remove the tithes, and he is obliged to say the declaration, bein bifnei habayis, both when there is a Beis Hamikdash, or bein shaloi bifnei habayis, and even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And we know, right? This year is the 5th year of the Shemitah cycle. But last year, the 4th year of the Shemitah cycle, right? So we know in Eretz Yisrael, they say the Vidui Maaser on Erev Pesach. Just check it out if you recall. And they also do the Biur Maaser, etc., etc. That's the way it's done in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, I'll call upon him. We're moving on. So the Rambam makes it clear that you say, you do it all. Everything is meant to be done, even if there's no Beis Hamikdash Kayim. So there's the din of Biur Maaser and Vidui Maaser, right? The removal, the disposal, and also the declaration. Says the Ravid, Ze Omar Avram, Ze Shibush. This is a mistake. Shahavidui einoi elo lifnei Hashem. He says this is incorrect, what the Rambam says. Why? Because the vidui, the declaration, has to be said lifnei Hashem. Because if you take out a chumash, right? We saw before in the chumash, the Torah says clearly. It says you should say Omarta lifnei Hashem Elokecha. It says in Parshas Sovay, you should say lifnei Hashem Elokecha. So the Rabbi says lifnei Hashem Elokecha means lifnei Hashem, and the Rambam says mefurish also the same thing. Mitzvahs esel is vadois lifnei Hashem. What is lifnei Hashem? Meaning when you're in the Beis Hamikdash. And according to the Minchas Chinuch in the Beis Hamikdash, you have to be dafkin in the Azora, in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, as he says in Mitzvah Tofresh Zayin, and as he says in the Mitzvahs Kriyas Bikurim, in relation to Bikurim, in Mitzvah Tofresh Vav, and as he says in Mitzvah Shin Chav Dalet, in relation to Netilas Lulav, that wherever is Lefnei Hashem Elokecha, it has to be in the Azora, in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. Nevertheless, so the Rambam knows what it says in the verse, what it says in the Pasuk. He says Mefurish, it has to be Lefnei Hashem Elokecha. We know it has to be. Nevertheless, the Rambam says that the declaration is said even when there's no Beis Hamikdash. Says the Ravid, that's mistaken, because it says Lefnei Hashem, the Ein Lefnei Hashem Ela Bebayis. When we perform the Lefnei Hashem Elokecha, when we have a Beis Hamikdash. When we have no Beis Hamikdash, we cannot perform this declaration. Others want to, so it comes out from the Shittas Arayvit that the Biur Maaser, the removal possibly applies. It seems for Bepashtus, it's just the Vidui doesn't apply. I've seen that others want to say that the Tur in Siman Yerideh, Siman Shem Lamed Aleph, who doesn't bring out all the halachas of Biur Maaser, so Vidui Maaser may follow with the shit of the Ravid, but the Shulchan Aruch follows with the shit of the Rambam. I'll call upon him. So the Kesef Mishnah and the Radvaz and the Mari Kurkus come, and of course come to the and look after the Rambam, and they substantiate this Rambam, and they basically substantiate it based on what the Rambam himself says. The Rambam says further in Halacha Vav, the Rambam says as follows: the mitzvah, that means mitzvah min hamufchor, the mitzvah lechatchil in the first instance that a person should say it in the Beis Hamikdash. Shenemar v'amarta lefnei Hashem Elokecha. Says the Rambam clearly that even when there is a Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, and the declaration should be said in Yerushalayim, in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Azorah. Nevertheless, says the Rambam, that's mitzvah. That's a mitzvah lechatchila initially, in the first instance, right? And that is a mitzvah manamufcha. That's the preferred way. The Rambam concludes, nevertheless, if he said the declaration, even when there's a Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, but he said it anywhere in Eretz Yisrael, he was mitzvah. He said the declaration. Says the Rambam, it's good enough, right? And the Sameach explains for us why. That the Rambam says the same type of thing in relation to Nazirus. We're not going to go into the details. He brings basis to what this Rambam said to this, the permission of the permit of this Rambam, that we find other with the same halacha. I'll call upon him. So therefore, says the Kesef Mishnah, look, being that the Rambam says, Vim is Vada B'chol Mokav Yotza, so it goes as follows. The Rambam himself allowed to say the declaration anywhere, even out of the Beis HaMikdash, and you fulfilled it, right? So B'meila therefore self-understood, and the Radbaz explains, therefore, even when we have no Beis HaMikdash, so either it's because we have no Beis HaMikdash, so we have no choice, so it's a b'diavad, so it's like after the matter and after the fact, so we have no choice, or possibly because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, so therefore it's incumbent, it's mandated that we must make that declaration. And also they claim that when there's no Beis HaMikdash, Lefnei Hashem is where? When there was a Beis HaMikdash, Lefnei Hashem Elokecha wasn't the Beis HaMikdash, correct? But now when we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, Lefnei Hashem is all over, anywhere. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. And now when we're confined and restricted, so even the Yidden in Yerushalayim, right, can't go whatever, so they have to be restricted in their homes, or now in the diaspora, you can't go to shul. So therefore, wherever you are, it's Lefnei Hashem. All upon him. And many Meforshim elaborate to prove. The Minchas Chinuch brings this in many different mitzvahs, the words of the Kesef Mishnah, etc. Actually, the Mari Kurkus wants to say the distinction between the Mokem HaMikdash and otherwhere. He says the Iker Shechina is in the Beis HaMikdash. The primary, essential of the Shechina is in the Beis HaMikdash, but the Shechina is all over, etc., etc. That's why it's good enough. Interesting, the Klechende in Parsha Sover, Rameir Dom Plotsky has a very interesting thing, a very interesting article where he explains that it varies. The Lefnei Hashem will depend, each mitzvah accordingly. When it comes to Lulav, and we have to take the mitzvahs Lulav in the Beis HaMikdash for 7 days. So where the rule is that we can do it in the whole of Yerushalayim, because then there's Aliyah L'Regel, etc. When it comes to mitzvahs Bikurim, you have to do it in the Beis HaMikdash there. You must always do it in the courtyard. When it comes to the mitzvah of Maaser Sheni, you can do it anywhere. Throughout Yerushalayim, throughout the whole of Eretz Yisrael, you can say the declaration. Because he says, because the Shechin is found in Eretz Yisrael, throughout Eretz Yisrael, it says, Tomid Eni Hashem Elokecha b'Mereishis Hashem v'Adach Rishon, so the Shechin is there, so that we can each mitzvah accordingly. The question is, what do we do with this Rambam? We have 10 minutes, and I'm going to go to the Rogatchover Gaon. I'm very sorry, but here we go. The Rogatchover Gaon says something phenomenal and amazing and mamish fascinating, not to be believed. Hecht seatbelt. Just as we see these Meforshim reconcile this, now we find, again, so in a nutshell, the Rambam has two unique opinion. Number one, about the removal, the time, the date of the removal, that the removal of the tithes has to be the day preceding Shvi Shel Pesach. Now, according to all opinions, it can't be done on the Yom Tov, the removal. And the Meforshim discussed that. We're not going to go there. So everybody holds it can't be on the first day of Pesach. It can be on the Chol Hamoed possibly, but it can't be on the Shvi Shel Pesach. It can't be on the first day of Pesach. But again, we're now focusing on the Shita, the unique novel opinion of the Rambam, that the removal has to be on the day preceding Shvi Shel Pesach. Right? And that is just in a couple of days we're going to have. And the declaration has to be on the day of Shvi Shel Pesach. Right? And we have another novel opinion of the Rambam. That is, the Rambam says that it can be done, the declaration, and the removal has to be even when we have no Beis HaMikdash. What's going on there? So the Rogatchover has this laser, these halachic laser spectacles, right? Which go through this something fascinating, and he combines all this in one nutshell, and he explains it as follows. And this he explains based on a Moreh Nevuchim of the Rambam. This is where he writes his glosses and his notes on the Rambam, on the Moreh Nevuchim, the guide to the perplexed, where there the Rambam explains the level of prophecy of Yecheskel Hanavi. And he draws distinctions between the level of prophecy of Isaiah, of Yeshaya Hanavi, and the level of prophecy of Yecheskel. Give me 10 to 15 minutes and I'm going to finish. You'll have a good night's sleep. Okay. Now, to appreciate what the Rambam says in the Meir Nevuchim and what the Rogatchover says, I'm just going to also present to you and introduce to you a discussion of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Chusi Yagun Aleinu and Lekutei Sichos, volume 33, and on Shavuos, where he brings this Meir Nevuchim and this Rogatchover in the notes, and basically he brings to our attention what the Gemara says in Chagiga. The Gemara says in Chagiga, and talks the difference, says the Gemara says everything, right? So there was they were both prophets. Yeshaya HaNavi was a prophet 200 years before Yecheskel HaNavi was a prophet. Okay? Yeshaya says the Gemara, whatever Yecheskel saw, the vision in his vision, Yeshaya saw in his vision. Because if you take out the Yecheskel, a Sefer Yecheskel scripture, right, however you say it in English, Ezekiel, etc., Yecheskel, so you'll find in Perek Aleph, he's saying he has this vision, right, this prophecy, he says, where he sees the heavenly chariot, and there's a whole detail, he has in detail, in Yecheskel chapter 1, he has in detail what the heavenly chariot looked like, etc., that's his vision. And then you have also in Yeshaya, Perek Vav, Yeshaya HaNavi has his vision. That where he has his nevuah, that's in Yeshaya. Says the Gemara, whatever Yecheskel saw, Yeshaya saw. And the Gemara says, what's the difference between them? This is kiben kvar sharoas hamelech, and this is kiben krach sharoas hamelech. Yecheskel HaNavi is likened to a ben kvar sharoas hamelech, to a villager who meets up with the king, who sees the king. And Yeshaya HaNavi is likened to a ben krach sharoas hamelech, to a city dweller who sees the king. So according to Rashi, it would seem that Rashi says that's why you'll find the difference between the text of Yecheskel and the text of Yeshaya. Being that he's a villager, so therefore he sees the king, so therefore he also discusses in detail not just the king himself, but also the entourage, the heavenly chariot. So that's why you'll find in Yecheskel not just talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what it looks like on the heavenly throne, but he also discusses in detail the ministering angels and what they look like, and also the heavenly chariot and what it looks like, etc., in detail. Because a ben kvar sharoas hamelech is also speaks in detail about what he experiences. Yeshaya, because he's a ben kvar sharoas hamelech, he's a city dweller. He doesn't, because he's used to seeing the king, right? So he doesn't have to detail the entourage of the king, the ministering angels, the celestial beings. So therefore, that's limited in his description, says Rashi, and therefore he only speaks mainly. He goes directly to the king. That's what the Gemara says according to Rashi. According to the Meir Nevuchim, it's actually saying something much more in depth, and that is as follows. The Meir Nevuchim, the Rambam explains in the Guide to Perplexed, that Yecheskel did not reach the level. There were a total different grade of Nevuah. The grade of Nevuah of Yeshaya, Yecheskel wasn't able to attain, and he didn't attain. And that's the meaning of what the Gemara says, ben kvar sharoas hamelech, meaning he's a villager, meaning that his vision wasn't in a limited fashion. The only way he was able to meet up, therefore a villager doesn't really get the essence of it all. The villager gets all excited about the entourage. I'm sure if you remember when Lahavdil Trump came to Yerushalayim, how all the Eretz Yisrael, they lined up on the streets and they said, oh, and they're getting all excited about all the what do you call it, all those fancy cars and all those, whatever they were over there, right? The entourage. Yeah, 10s and 20s, and then I think they even missed Trump. They didn't miss it. They just got all the police cars and all the stuff and all the hoo-ha around it. You get it? Because when a ben kvar sees it, you're not used to seeing the king. You get all excited about the entourage, etc., and all what's around the king, surrounding the king. And then you have to wonder, where is the king? Okay. So basically, because Yecheskel was a Keben Kfar Sheros HaMelech, meaning to say his vision was limited, wasn't on an elevated grade. So everything he saw was only a mode. So when he sees, that's what we find in the Psukim, that the only thing what he sees it ba'ofen shel aspaklaria she'eina me'ira, meaning only the image of, so to speak, of God, the image of God, not the essence. He doesn't see that. He can't tap into that. It's only an image. It's only a reflection, so to speak, because he reached up to a certain level and no further. And in the words of the Rogatchover Gaon, basically he has to go from bottom up. In other words, he goes up the ladder. He slowly goes up and gets acquainted and acquaints himself and sees all the lower levels of godliness. And as he goes up the rungs, etc., he eventually reaches to a point, but up to a point and no further than that. Yeshaya Hanavi sees it directly, goes, he's a ben krach sheros HaMelech, meaning to say, it's like it says in the Yalkut, that he is Godel HaNeviim. In other words, the greatest Navi is Moshe Rabbeinu. But within all the Neviim, he was a total different grade, and he is the Godel HaNeviim, and he, like the Gemara says, he sees, is it Ba'aspaklaria Me'ira, he doesn't have any shades. He meets up with the essence he sees. His vision is without any, not in the mode of image, and not in the mode of reflection, but he sees the essence without any shades or curtain or any contraction of the light. He sees the essence, and that's why he doesn't bother discussing the entourage, because the entourage is irrelevant. He goes directly, he sees, and that's the opening statement of Yeshaya, he sees the king, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the throne. And then, by the way, he also mentions what's going on with the celestial beings. So with this, based on this distinction of Yecheskel, says the Rogatchover Gaon, now I can appreciate what it says in the Mechilta, in Parshas B'Shalach. In the Mechilta in Parshas B'Shalach it says, that it says on the Pasuk, Zeh Keli V'Anveyu. Rashi brings on Zeh Keli V'Anveyu that when Hashem revealed himself and he split the sea. So Rashi brings, if you have a Chumash in Parshas B'Shalach, Rashi says that Ro'asa Shifcha Alayam, a maid servant, which was at the time of the splitting of the sea, she saw Mashaloro Godel Shar Hanavim, what the other Navim, the other prophets didn't see. They weren't able to, so to speak, to tap into. Even a Shifcha Alayam was able to tap into at the time of the splitting of the sea. In other words, says the Rogatchover Gaon, but basically, the Rogatchover Gaon goes a step further. He brings the text of the Mechilta. In the Mechilta, it says, Rasa Shivcha Layam Mashalei Yecheskel ben Buzi. Shivcha Layam saw and tapped in to the revelation of godliness at the time of the splitting of the sea, what Yecheskel wasn't able to tap into. And here comes the Rogatchover and says that's precisely what the message of the Mechilta is. The Mechilta wants to tell us that Yecheskel saw and taps in to what's going on above in the lofty in the upper worlds in a limited fashion and only in a form and in a mode of reflection and only in a form of a mode of image. But Rasa Shivcha Layom, she said, even everyone, it's not just a Shivcha Layom, because it says, the Rogatchover brings a Talmud Yerushalmi in Masechta Sotah, that even a Koton, a minor, all the minors in Klal Yisrael, every individual Yid, had Ruach HaKodesh like Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, everyone was merited to see, and they said, Zeh Keli V'Anveyu. If it's a reflection and an image, you don't say Zeh, this is it. But like the Meforshim, the Zeh Yenachamenu, when the Mechilta explains Zeh, Zeh means you're pointing with the finger, this is the real thing. That's what they say, Zeh Keli V'Anveyu. This is my God, and I will beautify him. So that's what the Rashi brings it in short, but the Mechilta conveys that Rasa Shivcha Layam, maid servant at the sea, tapped in and saw with her fleshika, with her physical eyes, what Yecheskel ben Buzi, Yecheskel Hanavi wasn't able to see. Meaning they reached such a level that in other words, there was such a Gili Elikus, there was such a great revelation, such a mighty revelation of godliness, which zapped through, so to speak, took through and through every individual at the splitting of the sea, that opened up everyone's eyes, and they were able to see Dosidos. So it's mamash like Yeshaya Hanavi. It's not Yecheskel, what Yecheskel didn't see, but something above and beyond Yecheskel. The Meda says the Rogatchover, Says the Rogatchover as follows. Till now, if you notice, all the Mefarshim explained the Lifnei Hashem. So according to that, Shvi Shel Pesach, what occurred Shvi Shel Pesach? Says the Rogatchover, what occurred Shvi Shel Pesach once upon a time happens every Shvi Shel Pesach. It's not something which happened yesteryear. It's exactly, we're now commemorating, it's not just a commemoration. When there's a Mitzrayim, so we have a Mitzrayim, we're in bondage before Pesach. And it comes to Pesach, there's a Yetzias Mitzrayim. And that's what it's all about, is Man Cheruseinu. So we're actually redeemed. When Shvi Shel Pesach comes around, that's when the splitting of the sea is. That's when the Kriyas Yamsuf is. But mainly in the day of Kriyas Yamsuf, when there's Kriyas Yamsuf, that's where there's a Gili Alakus. Hashem is revealed in such a manner that that everybody is able to point and say, Zeh Keli V'Anveyu. Now, if we're lacking in that, it's because there's something lacking in us. But Hashem, so to speak, is open. The light's not contracted. He's all there, and he's all there for us, and he reveals himself in completely, wholesomely, without contraction of the light. He's all there. And therefore, die was haben lichtige Augen see it and tap into it. That's why the Zmani Kriyas Yamsuf it was there. But it can be every single year when Shvi Shel Pesach comes around. Says the Rogatchover Gaon as follows. Just like the other Mefarshim explained, that in space, right, in the plane, in the space. So they said, there's no Beis HaMikdash, but anywhere in Yerushalayim or anywhere in Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam says it's good enough, it's Lifnei Hashem. The Rogatchover says it's also in time. It's in time. It's the time of the year that is Lifnei Hashem. The day of Shvi Shel Pesach is Lifnei Hashem. Says the Rogatchover Gaon, with this we can understand the Pesach of the Rambam. I want to bring to your attention, the Rogatchover Gaon doesn't say Droshes or Pshetlach. And what the Rogatchover is doing here is something fascinating and phenomenal. What he's taking a Moreh Nevuchim and an analysis, the way it is explained in the Geder of Yecheskel, and the Geder of Yeshaya HaNovi, and the way it is in all the Chazals. And what had occurred at Shvi Shel Pesach, with this he explains, that's the pshat of this Rambam L'Halacha, he explains it. He explains, with this we can appreciate why the Rambam chose to say that the removal of the tithes is Dafka on Shvi Shel Pesach. The declaration of the tithes is on Shvi Shel Pesach. And why he can say the declaration. And the question is, how can it say the declaration on Shvi Shel Pesach and there's no Beis HaMikdash? Because on the day of Shvi Shel Pesach, it's Lifnei Hashem. Rosa Shivcha Layom. So just like when they stood in the Beis HaMikdash, it's the Mokem HaShchina. That's where the Shchina rests. And Yidden were able to say, so every Shvi Shel Pesach, in your restricted home, in your house, under confinement, you're locked in. You can't do nothing. You can't go to shul. You don't have to go to shul. You can stay in your house because the Amarta Lifnei Hashem Elekecha is in your house, just like it is in the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. Gewaldig. That's the haflo what's gewaldig about Shvi Shel Pesach. Therefore, the Rambam. So that's what he says. With that, he reconciles the kasha of the Ravid. It's not Lefnei Hashem Elokecha. He says, no, Shvi Shel Pesach, that's the time of the year that by every Yid, it's Lefnei Hashem Elokecha. Then he goes on to explain also that we find that Dafka, the tithes, have a connection to Shvi Shel Pesach. Because, excuse me, before we get there, Shvi Shel Pesach, the Gemara says in Mesechus Haren Daf Lametes, that the Malachim wanted to sing song and say Hallel according to the Marsha. And Hashem says, Maaser Yodai Toivim Biyam, meaning the Egyptians are drowning. And you want to say Shira? In other words, God is merciful even for those. They have to get their punishment. But to sing song, let's not sing song. That's what the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. But listen to what the Rogatchover takes out of that. The Rogatchover says, look, from this Gemara in Sanhedrin I see, forget about the reason. It's very clear from this Gemara that Malachim don't function the night of Shvi Shel Pesach. There's no function for them. You know why there's no function for them? Because there's such a great revelation of God that night that the Malachim, we don't need them. They're out of the picture. They don't, generally, what are Malachim there for? We need Malachim to be Hashem, to implement what Hashem is requesting, what Hashem wants, and therefore being that the illumination, the light, the rays of the godliness has to be contracted, has to go via celestial beings, it has to go via angels, ministering angels, it has to go via Sorim, Shulamayla, etc., etc. But being that this night is such a Gili Alikus, that is Lefnei Hashem Elokecha, like we see. Yecheskel. So Lefizeh, there's no place for Malachim to function. We don't need their function. They're out of the picture. There's no Malachim, because Malachim are begetting the words of the Rogatchover. Ila va'olu means cause and effect. That's a seder, ishtalshalus. That's the norm. So even though Hashem is also in the ways of nature, right? But the Hashem is concealed in the darkei hateva. But this night, it's l'mayla min hateva. It's l'mayla min seder ishtalshalus. A lot of these words are from the Rogatchover Gaon, lav dafka for the memorim of the Alter Rebbe. So it's in the text of the Rogatchover Gaon. And then he goes on, I'm wrapping it up right now. Rogatchover goes on to show that with tzedakah, we're doing tithes. What's the meaning of tithes? The tithes we're giving, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that's matnos kohuna. The matonis which we're giving to the kohen and the matonis we're giving to the Levi, gifts, which Hashem says we should give it to the kohen because they're serving Hashem. Hashem says we give tithes to the Levite because they're serving Hashem. Hashem says we have to look after the poverty-stricken. That's the matnos, the Maaser oni. We're looking after the anim. Right? So all of that is together matonos. These are the inyanim of tzedakah. That's the tithes, that's tzedakah. So the Rogatchover brings to our attention what the Gemara says in Masechet Bava Basra. The Gemara says that when one gives charity, ani b'tzedek ech zefonecha zoiche v'roye pnei hashchina. When a yid gives tzedakah and does charity, he's zoiche, he merits and he sees the shchina. Now the Shekhinah is all over. We say Sheikhanad Morev Kodesh Moi. Nevertheless, the revelation of the Shekhinah is especially attained when we give charity. That's what the Gemara continues on there in Masechet Bava Basra Daf Yud. That Rabbi Lezer Yoel Prutaloni B'Hoder Matzli, when he wants to meet up with Hashem face to face, what does he do? He gives first a penny to charity. That's what is brought into Shulchan Aruch and the Halacha. Then he goes on to bring us what it says, another Gewaldige Zach. Being that the tithes, meaning being that tzedakah, reaches and taps into something special, and that is the Zoiche V'Roye Pnei Hashchina. That's where we find that, what does it say? One of the blessings of the prayers, which we say, is found in the Chumash, right? In Parshas Kislev, it says, Hashkifa mimoin kodshecha ben hashamayim. That's what we say to Hashem. So what does Hashkifa mean? Hashkifa means look down, gaze, look down. So there's a known Rashi in Parshas Vayera, by Zdoim, if you remember. Rashi says, Kol Hashkifa l'ra. Wherever it says that expression of hashkifa or hashkofa, that is l'ra, that speaks about curse and evil and terrible things which are going to happen. Except one place where hashkifa means l'toiva, and that is, this is the hashkifa of hashkifa m'mayim kodshecha min hashamayim, and that is found in the Talmud Yerushalmi in Masechta Maaser Sheni. In the Gemara, the Talmud Yerushalmi and Maaser Sheni says, the Rogatchover says that that's the koyach of charity, of tithes, of giving, of removing the tithes, and making that declaration. That brings about that we bring a transformation. Hashkifa mimem kodshecha ben hashamayim. That expression of hashkifa, which seemed to be l'ra, in general, it's used for evil and negative things. By giving tzedakah, that is transformed l'toiva, that Hashem gazes and looks down at us for the good. So basically, the Rogatchover says that's the koyach of tzedakah and charity, and dafki in this day of Shvi'ah Pesach, which we tap into the highest, loftiest levels, which there's no limits. And there's room for transformation, like yesh me'ayin. So therefore, we can make and transform the roiges, the anger, we can transform to kindness and goodness and blessing and bracha. That's the hashkifa, and we choose dafka to say hashkifa. And there's an interesting Aderes. The Aderes takes issue with Rav Kook. In one of the Inyanim, he says if there's a suffix, if we said the declaration or not, so Rav Kook says, quoted in the Achras Hashanim and also in Shabbos Teshuvas Mishpat Koyin and Simon and Vav, he says possibly we shouldn't say the hashkifa if we're not sure if we made the declaration, because the hashkifa is l'ra. So therefore, let's not say it, because we're going to be in trouble. And we're not going to fulfill the mitzvah, we're not going to be able to transform it for the positive. So the Adara says, so we'll just use a different pasuk. But something makes me think you can't use a different pasuk. This pasuk is a key pasuk. It's not just added, it's not an extra. It's part and parcel of the whole process of what's going on here. On the Shvi'ah Pesach, on the giving of the tzedakah, which brings us, we tap into this loftiest level, which brings about transformation from anger to kindness, etc. And that's why it's not going to Shvi'ah Pesach, and then the Rogatchover goes on. I'm concluding. That's where we find, it says that Avram Avinu was born in the hour of Jupiter. Says the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos Daf Kuf Nun Vav. And therefore his astrology says that he's not going to be able to have children, because Jupiter is on the west, and because it's on the west, so therefore it's the cold. Jupiter went in the hour of Jupiter, so it's towards the west. So therefore, because it's a cold climate, so therefore he won't be able to have children, etc. Hashem says to him, you know what, I'll pluck you out, I'll bring you above. Ein Mazel Yisrael, you're not connected with the astrology, I'll raise you up above the astrology. And that is that he will bring about that he will, just like it was in Marav, I'll bring you into the Mizrach, I'll place Jupiter on the east. And therefore, I'll maneuver the Jupiter from the right, from the west to the east, and therefore you'll be able to have children. Basically, the Rogatchover brings from there. It says, where do we know that from? It says in the pasuk, "Ani b'tzedek ech zefonecha." It's based on the tzedek, because Jupiter is called tzedek. Tzedek in the Hebrew, Jupiter is tzedek. So Jupiter, he brings another Gemara in Masechta Erin Daf Nun Vav, and take out that Gemara, you'll see that Jupiter, in the time of Nisan, etc., depending on the equinox, etc., it can cause havoc and bring storms and cause terrible things. Look at Erev and Daf Nun Vav. Basically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll maneuver that Jupiter. So Jupiter is called Tzedek. So when a Yid gives Tzedakah, he transforms the negativity, the evil, the harshness, the anger of Jupiter, which is causing havoc and doesn't allow goodness and kindness. So the tzedakah, when a Yid gives, he transforms that all, and all of this is performed after on the Shvi'ah Shel Pesach. With this, we conclude. Let me just say that we need all these brachas. So let it be on the Shvi'ah Shel Pesach when we're home and it's Lefnei Hashem. And we have to tap into it. And if we focus on it, and when we're chavim, we know very well in a kavanah, when we do things on Shvi'ah Shel Pesach, we daven and we bench and we learn and we discuss in Yonim of Shvi'ah Shel Pesach, and we say the Shira, we're going to say the Shira Sayam, and that's when Ras Shivcha Layom. We say Zekeni Van Veyu. So we have to tap into it, and may Hashem bring about that it should open up our eyes, that we should be able to fulfill Kipshutai, that Lefnei Hashem Elokecha, and that should bring about a true refuah for every one of us, a protection for every one of us, and a refuah for Klal Yisrael, that this terrible disease and this horrible Jupiter, which is causing havoc in the worldwide, mankind, v'chulu, should be totally eradicated in the schus of our limud Torah, in the schus of our tzedakah, and l'chaim v'levrocha, have a good moed, und a freilichen Yomtiv, Yashikoyach for joining, Yashikoyach for hosting me, and Yashikoyach Menchi, and again, Yashikoyach Rabbi Shetrevish and your family. Have a wonderful moed, and good night, l'chaim v'levrocha.
Go ahead. Let's go ahead.